The warm summer afternoon was interrupted by the unmistakable sound of laughter. Laughter that wasn't filled with joy, but with mockery. Just outside a small park bench, a group of teenagers gathered, and at the center of it all was Tommy, the biggest bully in the neighborhood. His cruel words echoed through the air, causing a quiet ripple of discomfort among the people nearby. But there was one person who wasn't intimidated. An old man sitting on the park bench, his gray hair tousled by the breeze and his eyes hidden behind thick glasses, observed with a calm demeanor. His name was Arthur, but everyone called him Grandpa Arthur. Not because of his age, but because of the wisdom he exuded in every interaction. Today, however, Grandpa Arthur's calm was about to shatter. Tommy, the bully, had his eyes set on a target, an elderly woman, struggling to carry groceries to her car. As Tommy approached her with a smug grin, Arthur stood up, his movements slow but deliberate. The crowd of teenagers watched with anticipation, some of them sensing what was about to happen. Tommy didn't know it yet, but today would be the day his life changed forever. And Grandpa Arthur was the one who would make sure of it. Arthur had lived a long life, one full of highs and lows, triumphs and losses. In his youth, he had been a proud soldier, fighting for his country during times of war. His strength and courage had earned him respect, but it wasn't until his retirement that he discovered a new kind of purpose. As he grew older, he found that the world around him was changing faster than he could keep up. He didn't mind the slow pace of his golden years, but he did mind the direction society was heading. He had seen the rise of new generations who seemed to forget the values that once held the world together: kindness, respect, and empathy. Bullying, which he had thought was a thing of the past, had found new life in the form of taunts and social media shaming. It broke his heart to see young people treating others with cruelty, not realizing how deep the scars they left could be. Arthur had 2 children, both of whom were grown and lived in distant cities, but he had never lost his connection with the community. He spent his days sitting on the park bench, a quiet observer of life. It wasn't that he wanted to be a bystander, but he had always believed in letting people live their lives and deal with their struggles on their own. However, as the years went by, he could no longer sit idly by when he saw someone suffering, especially when the cruelty was aimed at the vulnerable. He had seen Tommy around the neighborhood before, always with a group of friends, always loud and brash. He had heard the way Tommy spoke to the elderly, the way he pushed around kids smaller than him. It made his blood boil, but Arthur kept his distance, unsure of how to intervene without escalating things. But today was different. Today, Grandpa Arthur was no longer going to stand by. Tommy was picking on someone who needed help, and Arthur couldn't stand by any longer. The moment Tommy's voice cut through the air, Arthur's blood ran cold. The elderly woman had dropped a carton of eggs, and Tommy was standing over her, laughing as she bent down to pick them up. "What's the matter, lady? You can't even carry your groceries? Maybe you should go home before you break something else." The group of teenagers around Tommy snickered, but their laughter was cut short when they saw Arthur slowly walking toward them. His eyes never left Tommy as he approached, his pace steady, his old cane tapping lightly on the pavement with each step. Tommy, sensing an opportunity for more fun, turned toward Arthur. "Hey, old man, what's the deal? Are you going to tell me to stop?" he mocked, stepping closer to him, trying to intimidate. The crowd fell silent, waiting for Arthur's response. Arthur stopped in front of Tommy, his face expressionless. He looked Tommy up and down for a moment, then spoke in a calm but firm voice. "I've seen many things in my life, but I've never seen a man need to pick on someone to feel strong. You don't have to act this way." Tommy scoffed. "And what are you going to do about it, Grandpa? You think you can teach me a lesson?" The crowd watched in silence, waiting for Arthur to react. They expected him to back down, to fold under the weight of Tommy's insults. But Grandpa Arthur wasn't the type to back down from a challenge. He wasn't about to let this bully get away with his actions. Arthur took a deep breath, his calm demeanor never faltering. "I don't need to teach you anything," he said softly, "but I think I can show you something you'll never forget." Tommy's smirk grew wider. "Show me what?" You can't do anything to me, old man. That's when Arthur's plan began to unfold. He wasn't going to fight with words or fists. He was going to do something far more powerful. Arthur stepped back, his eyes still locked on Tommy's. He raised his hand, not in anger, but in invitation. Come with me, Tommy. I want to show you something. The crowd murmured, unsure of what was happening. Tommy's arrogance faded for a moment as he looked around at his friends. They were all watching intently, unsure of how to react. Arthur didn't wait for Tommy's response. He turned and began walking toward a nearby tree, motioning for Tommy to follow. Tommy hesitated. Then, driven by curiosity and pride, he followed. The group of teenagers trailed behind them, whispering to each other. When they reached the base of the tree, Arthur pointed to a small plaque at its trunk. The plaque read, "In memory of those who fought for peace." Tommy glanced at the plaque, then back at Arthur, confused. Arthur turned to face him. His eyes now filled with a depth of wisdom that only age and experience could bring. This tree was planted by a group of veterans many years ago. They fought wars so that people like you wouldn't have to live in fear. They protected people, whether they were weak, old, or different. They didn't pick on the vulnerable. They stood up for them. Tommy was silent, his smirk gone. Arthur continued, "You see, the strongest people are those who protect others, not those who tear them down. A real man doesn't need to prove his strength by hurting others." Tommy shifted uncomfortably, the weight of Arthur's words slowly sinking in. He had never thought about it that way before. He had always seen strength as something to boast about, to show off. But Arthur's words made him pause. Arthur wasn't finished yet. "I know you don't want to be remembered as the guy who picked on people. I know you want to be someone more. I'm going to give you the chance to change that. If you promise to help that woman carry her groceries and apologize for what you did, I'll call this a lesson learned. But if you don't, well, you'll just be another bully who missed his chance to do something good." Tommy stood there, conflicted. He had never been challenged like this. No one had ever dared to speak to him like this, especially not someone like Grandpa Arthur. He looked back at the group of teenagers who had once been his loyal followers. The weight of their eyes on him felt different now. They weren't encouraging him to bully the old man. They were waiting to see what he would do. For a long moment, Tommy didn't move. His friends exchanged glances, unsure of what to make of this strange interaction. But then, slowly, Tommy's shoulders relaxed. He let out a heavy sigh and turned toward the elderly woman, who was still trying to gather her groceries. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Tommy walked over to her. "Hey, I'm sorry," he said, his voice softer than anyone had ever heard it. "I was a jerk. Let me help you with that." The elderly woman looked up in surprise, her face softening as she saw the genuine remorse in Tommy's eyes. She nodded, her smile hesitant but sincere. "Thank you, dear," she said. Arthur stood quietly by, watching the scene unfold. A small smile tugged at his lips. He had done it. He had planted a seed of change in Tommy's heart, and in doing so, he had shown the teenagers around them what real strength looked like. Tommy didn't stop there. He walked back to the group, his head held a little higher, a newfound respect in his eyes. "You were right, Arthur," he said, his voice quieter now. "I've been an idiot. I don't want to be that guy anymore." Arthur nodded, his heart swelling with pride. "It's never too late to change, Tommy. You've just taken the first step." As Tommy walked away with a new sense of purpose, the group of teenagers who had once laughed at his cruel behavior now looked at him differently. Some of them, Arthur noticed, were even beginning to reflect on their own actions. That day, Grandpa Arthur didn't just teach Tommy a lesson. He taught everyone around him the value of kindness and humility. And as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the park, Arthur sat back down on his bench, a quiet satisfaction filling his chest. He hadn't used force or harsh words. He had used wisdom, patience, and a belief that even the hardest of hearts could be softened. If you found Arthur's lesson as powerful as we did, Be sure to subscribe for more inspiring stories about kindness and the unexpected ways people can change. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that we all have the power to do good, no matter how small the act may seem. Grandpa Arthur's wisdom shows us that it's never too late to be the person you want to become. Join us again for more uplifting stories that inspire kindness, change, and strength. Don't forget to like and comment below. Your voice matters.